Hi, welcome to Monday Morning Glory. I'm Jasmine.
And I'm Mary.
And we are both life coaches who experienced devastating and sudden loss. And we decided to turn our pain into purpose by becoming a resource for other people who are experiencing loss, grief through death, or even through disappointment. And so
Mhm.
today's topic, we're going to talk about if you have your affairs in order. So, you know what you might or might not know how just stressful it can be when a loved one passes away and paperwork has to be filled out or passwords have to be figured out and things are everywhere and you don't know where to start or where to begin. So we want to help you a little bit with that. Those of us that have experienced it, you might have already started to get your affairs in order, but those of us who haven't, here's a quick checklist on things that you can do to prepare your family for the inevitable. So, Mary, could you kick us off with what you have, and then I'll wrap us up.
Okay. Um, so when it comes to dealing, nobody really wants to talk about this when it comes to dealing with death and, but they call it the business of death. And so there is a lot involved. And even though it's not a fun topic, I really encourage people to do this now because especially when it's a sudden, unexpected loss, you don't want to, your mind's not going to be functioning well. And you don't want to be having to make all these decisions, ahead of time, during that time. So it is really helpful to have decisions made ahead of time. So one of the first things I want to mention is, of course, it's a very important that you have a will, and if you are a parent with children, under 18, then one of the things that you're going to want to make sure that you is in your will that you are going to want to list guardians for your children. If by some chance, if you're a single parent, or if somehow both of you and your spouse are lost, if both of you die in an accident or something, make sure that you have guardians listed in your will for your children, and make sure that you talk to them. You talk to these people and make sure that they are okay when that they're willing to take on that responsibility. And it's a good idea then, as far as financially, that you have trust set up, things like that. But make sure that you get a will, and you can find templates online to even get your will made out. It's a good idea to take it someplace and have it notarized, but or you can go through an attorney, which and whatever you choose. But I really think it's a good idea to have a will written out. If you are and have adult children and you don't have children at home, and like for me, now that I'm my spouse is, my husband passed away. I I now have had to make I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a will when my husband passed away. Thank you. Thank God he had just gotten his will redone a year before. In fact, it's less than a year before he died. That it's a good idea to get that will taken care of, and you choose who's going to be your executor. You need to have, ask whoever it is, it might be one of your children, it might be a sibling, but ask someone and that's going to be a big responsibility. So you ask somebody to be the executor. One of the things, that along with that, it's a good idea to have what they call power of attorneys, that are set up. One can be it's called a durable power of attorney, and that is if at some point you become incapacitated to make decisions, that this person can step in and make decisions for you. You can have a medical power of attorney. You can have somebody do the same, all of that, or you can, have separate people, but have a medical power of attorney where, once again, if you're incapacitated to be able to make decisions, somebody else can make those medical decisions for you. It's a good idea to have a living will so that they know what your wishes are, whether, you want to have life-saving, things done, but they know what your desire is. When it comes to, with your spouse or whatever, I'm grateful to too that my husband, we hadn't done really any planning, but uh we did have the discussion, and I don't even know why, but it was just a month or two before he passed away very suddenly, that we had talked about the idea that we both wanted to be cremated. And so that when that happened, then that was I already knew, okay, he's already said he wanted to be cremated. So that decision was already made. Uh, but because we had not made any funeral arrangements, it was really hard for me when he died so suddenly, and he died at home. The coroner came, so I know some of the paperwork that you read says that they need to take you to the hospital. That's not true. You know, the coroner came to my house. He was pronounced dead, and he was taken directly to a funeral home. But they asked me, "What funeral home do you want?" And I was like, "I don't know. So I had one in mind, but I couldn't think. I couldn't think. So I just said, well, name some. And when they got to the one, oh, okay, yeah, that's the one. And so they came and took care of, and it was very smooth, and they were very gracious, but I'm totally in shock, and I'm totally numb. So that's why it's a good idea to have things ahead of made, um, all planned out ahead of time. And along with that, one advantage was if you have the funeral home and you make arrangements ahead of time, you understand the funeral home is going to be responsible. They will take care of getting you the death certificates. They will take care of notifying Social Security, notifying your bank. They take care of all that stuff. So that gets done for you. Another thing that I did not know at the time was it's a good idea that you can go to the bank, and have especially like I said, because my children are adults, I can have a direct beneficiary put on my bank account. So this way they can, and I named my both of my children as beneficiaries, so they can go directly to the bank, with the death certificate, and their ID, and they have access to what's in my account, because I've named them as beneficiaries. And so the other thing too is that probably a lot of people don't think about, is making sure, number one, that with your vehicles, that about the license, and the titles, where where the title is, you know, whose name is it in? Is it only in your spouse's name? That type of thing. Now, I had to deal with that because my husband had a business, so he had vehicles with the business, so it was a lot more in depth that I had to deal with. And so I learned a lot of things, but it's really important to have a will, get those direct beneficiaries, on your accounts, and make funeral plans, really, decide what it is. Do you want to have burial? Do we want to have cremation? The one thing we didn't talk about is what are we going to do with the ashes? So you can do burial, you can do a mausoleum, you can, whatever you choose. And so what my children and I have decided right now, we have a memorial set up in our home where my husband's urn is, and we have a little memorial set up for him there. So, but it's a good idea to talk about these things ahead of time. So when your brain is offline, you're not having to make these decisions. So those are just some of the things. There is a whole lot more, but those are just some of the top things that, you want to make sure. And number one is making sure you have the funeral arrangements. And this way uh, uh, you and your spouse both have input as to, like, what kind of funeral, uh, or ceremony, or what do you want? Somebody do you want to have an open casket, even though you can do that even if you're doing cremation. So do you want to do that kind of stuff? So it's a good idea to have those decisions made ahead of time so you don't have to think about it. It's already done.
Yeah, nope. Those are all really good points. And like you said, I know it's not something that any of us want to think about. And then our loved ones don't want to even talk about it. We might be comfortable with setting the plans and getting those things in order, but for our loved ones to think about a time when we're not around, can be a really difficult, but very real thought. Right. So I just wanted to circle back real quick, just even talking about guardianship. That's something that, myself and my husband are working on, because even though, so we didn't lose, each other, which I know as a spouse, there's like a lot of scrambling to do for the paperwork and who owns what, and if that spouse had a business and all those things. Well, when you've lost a child, there's not nearly as much paperwork and preparation, but it did kind of awaken us to the fact that, man, life is unfair, and that um there's no guarantee. We're on the ride on the road a whole lot, and so we just want to be able to set things up. So the guardianship is really important for us, and that's something that we're kind of chipping away at the mountain of getting set up and being prepared for, like I said, the inevitable of loss at some point. And it might not be tragic, it could be slow, whatever it might be, but it's there. All these things come to an end, and we just want to make sure that our family is squared away and everybody has directives to know what to do. And then the second point you talked about with the funeral home, had I not had a friend that was already working in that industry, I think I would have been very lost. But thankfully, I already knew someone. She does grief coaching. She actually wrote the foreword to my book. And she's a friend. I've taken some of her training and things like that. And so, as soon as we were in this situation, this scenario, I already had her in my thoughts, which was I was
Mhm.
thankful for, because you're just kind of lost. Like you said, it's how often are we talking about funeral homes? It's not something that you really bring up. So then I'm going to wrap us up just with when you have all of those things established, once you have all the documents signed and everything written, you need to make everything accessible to your family, because that's going to be a headache trying to figure out passwords at that time. And we're doing like face identification now and thumbprints. And when that loved one is not here, it's like, oh man, I need to be able to get into all these spaces. So it might be a good idea to have a notebook. I'm sure that Amazon, somebody's already thought ahead to think of having a book where you can write those details down, and your family can know about the bank accounts, the life insurance, the vehicle titles, um, your Apple ID. So all of the logins, all of the passwords are going to need to be known for them. So if it's an adult, right, the utility accounts, credit cards, and make sure you leave very clear instructions behind for them. So if there were just different notes about the account that they, need to know about, make sure you're putting little special notes in there as well. And like I said, you can just get a composition book or notebook and begin to keep track of those things.
Mhm.
Yep. So, Mary, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Probably the only other thing I would add is making sure that your loved ones know about any life insurance policies and where they are located.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing I will say for me. My son was here with me, even though it was the middle of the night. I was able to get a hold of him, and he came over. And I mean, before, even by the time they had come to get my husband and taken him to the funeral home, my son was already pulling out the life insurance policies and the
Mm-hmm.
will. And I think part of that was he just wanted to stay busy. He was trying
Yeah.
to keep himself busy. But,
Yeah.
so he knew exactly where everything was. And so it's important to make sure that somebody knows where all of your documentation is.
Yep. Yep. Very good. And we like to end off our time together with a word of encouragement. So, Mary,
Mhm.
do you have your word of encouragement for today?
Well, one of the things that I can say is, um, give me a second because I had it pulled up and then I forgot it.
Yep. 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 That's fine.
Uh, Basically, I don't remember what it was that I said the last time, but I want you to remember that in every storm and every cloud, the clouds don't last forever, but in a lot of storms, you're going to find a rainbow. And that was one of the things that I really cried out for during this time as I was walking through this. God always has treasures, planted here. You find the treasures. If you think about gold, diamonds, rubies, everything is found in the dark. And so when you're going through a dark time, I've asked the Lord, help me not to miss any treasures that are planted along the way here. So keep your eyes open for treasures. Even in this dark place, God has treasures for you.
Hmm. Amen. So good. So good. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you guys have any questions, comments, or topics that you would like for us to cover, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can contact me on my website, jasminemcglure.com. I have a very funky spelling for my name, so just make sure you check the description below. And you can also reach out to Mary.
And my email is empoweredlivinglc@gmail.com, or my webpage is empoweredlivinglifecoaching.net.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Okay, bye.